Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going on a really fascinating journey. We're taking a mathematical and honestly a deeply psychological look at how to literally buy back your life, one unearned dollar at a time. We're going to map out the exact milestones it takes to transition from trading your precious time for a paycheck to quietly funding your entire existence just through the power of dividends. All right, I want you to picture this. It's, say, 6:14 in the morning. You didn't even set an alarm. You wake up naturally, walk to the kitchen, make your coffee, and you're just looking out the window at the street filling up with people rushing off to somewhere they have to be. Then your phone buzzes. It's not a stressful news alert. It's not your boss. It is a deposit notification for exactly $41. Okay, let's really dive into this for a second. Because that $41, it didn't come from grinding at a job, billing a client, or picking up an extra shift. It came from owning. You were literally just lying there sleeping, and the money arrived anyway. This explainer is all about what it takes to get to that exact morning. We're not talking about getting wildly, arbitrarily rich. It's about hitting a very specific number that pays for the life you used to fund with your physical hours. So let's kick things off with part one, the first unearned dollar, proving the concept. Look, before you can even think about replacing your salary, you have to prove to yourself that this whole concept actually works. You have to make the decision to stop letting a $10,000 savings account just sit there, yielding basically 0.01%, while inflation quietly eats it alive. So you realize doing nothing has a real cost. On a random Saturday morning, you open your brokerage app and you buy a completely boring dividend ETF yielding 4%. Now, your coworker hears about this at lunch and totally laughs at you. He's like, man, that's just a dinner. Call me when it's real money. Meanwhile, he just spent $400 on things he probably can't even remember buying. Now, what's really interesting here is the massive paradigm shift taking place. That $400 a year isn't really about the amount. It's about the category. Think about it. Every single dollar you have ever earned before this moment required your physical hours and your attention. This $400 required absolutely nothing from you. It is definitive mathematical proof that unearned income exists, making it arguably the most important dollar you will ever make. Which brings us to part two, surviving the yield trap, or the danger of six figures. So as you keep patiently clicking that reinvest button, the years pass. You hit $50,000, and suddenly that's paying your electricity and internet, making you feel, quietly ahead of family members leasing massive $900 a month BMWs. But then, you hit the $100,000 mark. You're pulling in $4,000 a year. That's enough to buy a full year of groceries for one person, completely paid for by money you didn't even earn that year. But listen closely, because right here at six figures is exactly where dangerous impatience sets in. This is almost always when a buddy texts you about some hot new stock. You know the text, right? Your friend says this new stock is yielding 12%. On $100,000, that's $12,000 a year. He says you'd be crazy not to jump on it. But what he's actually looking at is an absolute mirage. It's a yield trap. The yield only looks that enormous because the stock price has completely collapsed by 40% in 2 years. The underlying company's bleeding, and they're paying that massive dividend out of a rapidly deteriorating business. Just think about this stark contrast here. You've got your remarkably boring 4% ETF steadily surviving market cycles and reliably compounding over the years. Compare that to that exciting 12% stock. Fast forward 6 months, its dividend inevitably gets cut in half, and the stock drops another 30%, taking your principal down with it. The golden rule at six figures is that your greatest danger isn't running out of money, it's getting impatient right when the compounding actually starts to do the heavy lifting. Let's move into part three, the floor and the power of no, covering those real-life line items. If you manage to survive that itch to do something stupid, you cross into this territory where the wealth stops being just a fun math problem and becomes intensely practical. At $250,000 invested, your assets are paying you $10,000 every single year. Nobody at your job knows this, but that exact amount fully covers a car payment, your insurance, and your gas for an entire year of driving in 2026. Every single mile you drive is covered by money you didn't have to clock in for. So the crucial point is, picture sitting in traffic in your totally paid-off 2019 Toyota. It represents quiet wealth. It's reliable, and more importantly, it owes you absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the guy in the lane next to you is screaming at his phone in a brand new leased SUV. His loud debt owes him $800 a month for the next 4 years. That's roughly $38,000 before he even hands the keys back. You know, your mother probably told you the wealthiest people drive the most unremarkable cars. Well, now you realize she was describing something very, very real. All right, I want to deliberately slow down for this next milestone. $500,000 invested. This is a game changer. This portfolio pays you $20,000 a year. This represents what financial planners refer to as the floor. It covers rent in a lot of America, plus groceries, utilities, and gas. Basically, the bare bones shape of a functioning human existence is now entirely covered. Now, let's be clear. This floor does not make you rich. You aren't flying private or living in absolute luxury. But here is the magic of what it does do. It buys the single most expensive word in the English language: no. When your manager walks into your office at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday and says he really needs you to stay late, you just pause. For the first time in your working life, you feel completely optional. You realize that the yes you are about to give is, finally, an actual choice.
All right, part 4, the $1 million silence, the tax magic.
Entering this space past the $500,000 mark brings us to a really quiet, profound reality, where your portfolio permanently replaces a full average American salary. At $1 million invested, the crazy thing is you don't actually feel different. Your car looks exactly the same, your apartment is the same, your face in the mirror hasn't changed, but you are now generating $40,000 a year passively. You are light years ahead of the coworkers sitting right next to you. And you want to know the real secret to this number? It's all in the taxes. Let's move on and see how this builds, because when you break down the reality of the 2026 tax code, it is frankly stunning. A standard salaried W-2 employee making $40,000 loses roughly 22 to 32 cents of every single dollar before it even hits their checking account. But if you are a single filer earning that same $40,000 in qualified dividends because it falls under that $47,025 limit, you owe exactly $0 to the IRS. Literally zero. You keep every single penny. It really proves the old saying, the wealthy don't just earn more, they figure out how to keep more of what they earn. Which brings us to the final stretch, part 5, buying back your Tuesday, the ultimate boon. So, a recent Northwestern Mutual study from 2026 stated that Americans say they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably. Imagine reading that over your morning coffee and suddenly realizing, wait, you already have more than that. At $1.5 million invested, your incredibly boring strategy is now paying out $60,000 annually. It is the ultimate proof that your patience actually worked. There were no dramatic windfalls, no insanely lucky market timing. You just repeated the exact same boring decision for years. And it grants you the absolute power to simply open your laptop, write a calm, professional resignation email, and give your full notice. Because, you see, when you hit send on that email, it finally clicks what the money actually bought. It wasn't the fancy coffee. It wasn't the beautiful view out the window. Those things were always there. What the money bought was the Tuesday. A totally unremarkable, entirely unscheduled, beautifully ordinary Tuesday that now belongs 100% to you. And walking through this whole timeline brilliantly illustrates the big picture. From year 1, securing that very first unearned dollar while your coworker laughed at you, to year 7, establishing the floor and earning the immense power to say no, all the way to year 18, reaching total undeniable freedom. 18 years of intense patience, blindly clicking reinvest, avoiding those flashy yield traps, and happily driving an unremarkable car. You didn't get rich overnight. You just got exceptionally patient. We live in this incredibly loud, highly financed world that charges you everything it has for the simple inability to wait. So I'm going to leave you with this final, really important thought to reflect on today. What is your inability to be patient costing you?